It's time. It's time for you to live better.
It's time for you to feel healthier.
It's time for you to live longer.
It's time for you to enjoy your journey.
It's time for you to understand your body and your mind. Thank you so much for joining us on It's Time today. We are your hosts. I'm Linsly Donnelly, your citizen scientist and your longevity expert for midlife women.
And I'm Dr. Jen Wagner, physician and holistic performance expert. Welcome to It's Time, powered by Prosper. Just a quick reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. We are not offering medical advice, nor are we entering into any type of physician or clinician relationship with listeners. Always consult your healthcare provider before beginning any new fitness, nutrition, or lifestyle changes to ensure they're right for you. Your health and safety is our priority, and let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Okay, Jen, I can't believe it, but we're wrapping up a year and kicking off a new one. Just so fun.
So much fun. It's just time is flying and keeps getting better.
Yes. I think, I know we've talked about this before, but what I love about the new year is it's just like this permission to reset, right?
Yeah.
It's like, new canvas, mulligans, gimmies, all of it kicks off on January 1. And you can just experiment and try things that are, the word resolution gets overplayed, but, experiments. And we talk about prototyping habit all the time. And I feel like it's this permission to prototype coming into the new year.
Absolutely. And I feel like even doing that in our physical spaces, I was just sharing with you before we started, we're cleaning out parts of our house that we haven't cleaned out since we moved, and how refreshing and rejuvenating that is. And to transition, as kids are getting older and you don't need as much stuff to relive some memories, but then realize that that can benefit others now as you bring in the new.
Yeah.
So super fun.
Can shed it.
Yes.
So it has this big imagery of a big white canvas. And so you and I were kind of playing with the idea, like everybody out there right now is talking about how to think about your new year and how to frame it up. And we're always coming at it from how to live better now and in the long haul, but how to make it easy and accessible.
Yes.
So we've got our 11 with a nod to Spinal Tap. We're taking it to 11. Very easy to implement, but things to maybe keep in mind as people are painting this canvas of 2025 to make sure they've got a foundation that sets it up to be a year serving thrival for midlife women, setting up the year to really be in service of your thrival.
Absolutely. And I love how you titled this Grace with Pace, because I think that's so important. I think as we're trying new things on, we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and we have to remind ourselves that we're all unique, we're all individuals, and just as you and I know, what works for you sometimes doesn't work for me, and what works for me sometimes doesn't work for you. And it's great to bounce ideas off of, but to try to keep that frustration or fear of failure low, because it's not all going to work for us. We're all different, we're all individuals, and this is the whole idea of prototyping and trying. And it's not going after these 3 big things that are overwhelming. It's just making these small changes.
Yes. I think the reason why we were so excited about the idea of Grace with Pace is because I think, midlife women overall probably suffer from the speed of thought syndrome, where you can think of it, but the action takes much longer than the thought. Yes. So that is the underpinning of Grace with the Pace that unfolds.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in. What's number 1 on your list?
So this is one that I would love for you to kind of outline and weigh in, because it really is just knowing your foundation. So knowing what are the checkups. Let's talk about annual checkups, things that we should just make sure, hey, it's January, schedule these in the course of a year, checkups and check-ins to make sure your kind of physical fitness component is cared for and you can put on a regulated schedule. What are those things people should just write down in their day planner right now, get these things scheduled in the course of this year?
So, I think, again, we were laughing about this the other day. I was cleaning something out and came across these papers of anticipatory guidance. When you're a parent, you take your child in for their well child checks, right? Like nobody ever thinks about not taking their kid in for their well child checks. Most of us, we have to. And they give you a piece of paper to say, this is what to expect in this time block. And I've always wondered, even from my time practicing medicine, like, why does that stop at 18? Why do we stop giving people some anticipatory guidance about, hey, this is your age, this is your point in life, these are the things you want to start to think about. So I kind of frame my checkups and check-ins in that standpoint. So I think number one, and most of us probably haven't done this, get your hearing checked.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that easy for the doctors to do, but they don't always think of it either. So ask for a hearing test.
Yeah.
Same thing with vision. So checking your hearing and vision. We know those are both linked to longevity, linked to our well-being, and really
Dementia.
impact
Yeah.
our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And even linked to how we have relationships. If we're not hearing people talking to us, we start to feel more and more isolated.
Yeah.
So I think those are a couple big things. The other thing I like to kind of wrap my mind around is, we have months in the calendar year that are dedicated to certain things. So like heart health is in February. So it's a good time to get your cholesterol checked once a year. That's like
Yeah.
another kind of once a year thing to do. See your primary care, get your hearing checked, get your vision checked, get your cholesterol checked, and see your dentist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what this reminds me of, Jen, too, is, I know we had this in our digital course, our online course, Thriving or Next, but we have a whole cheat sheet of all of the annual checkups and check-ins. So we'll link
Yep.
to that in the show notes.
Yep.
But you had done a great job kind of framing out for people. Here's what to check annually. Here's what to check quarterly.
Yeah.
And then there's all the daily metrics that we can all do with wearables as we're interested.
Yeah. And then, it's always a good time to reflect, like, when was my last mammogram?
Yeah.
Have I had a colonoscopy? And those are the things that, like, maybe, probably everyone should have a mammogram every year. Some of us get more frequent breast imaging if we have certain risk factors, but colonoscopy, sometimes it's hard to remember. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Same with pap smears as we get, more advanced age. We don't necessarily do those annually, but I always think January is a good time to check in and check your calendar. Like, when was the last time I had this done? And is this something that needs to be on the list this year?
Yeah. The other one that I think you flagged for us after talking with Dr. Jane was your blood pressure, to check your blood pressure as a leading indicator of heart health. So I know we're going to have a series of episodes about that coming up in Heart Month, but if you're in the January planning calendar now, that's one to have on there because it's
absolutely
an unexpected one.
And I think that's one that we can even bump into the once a month to once a week. I know Jane was saying daily. I think until you kind of see where you live, I think that's really important, because I know when I go to the doctor, mine's 60 points higher. It's irrelevant to what it is day to day. So I think, that's a great call on one that we should probably be doing more often. And, things like again, and I let you play in here for sure. If you're working on changing something too, it might change the pace at which you're monitoring things, right?
Definitely.
So if you're really going deep in body comp, maybe you want to DEXA quarterly.
Yeah.
Or every 6 months instead of annually.
Yeah. And what I have discovered, I think, is probably much more frequently than people ever heard about is, and this is postmenopause, is the bone density thing. Because I'm here. I am again wearing my like weighted T-shirt, but there's all this change in bone density that can happen quarterly. It's not just annually. It's probably annually before menopause, if that sounds right.
Yeah.
To you, I know because you're looking at your metrics, but what I've noticed post menopause is it actually changes quarterly.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one.
And I would say, we're still learning about cholesterol through menopause and how rapidly those numbers change. And it could be once a year is not enough. We're not quite sure yet. But I think, if you have risk factors and are worried, that's a pretty easy, simple thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah. So maybe for this one, if we just sum it up and go, hey, these are the ones that are recommended. And again, this will be in our show notes, but also maybe take a moment, take a beat to pause on what you want to track, right? Like it might be some of those happiness metrics. It might be sleep. It might be something else that's not in the annual checkup bucket, but it is just something that if you think of the course of the year, I want to be tracking some data on these things. Here's a great time to carve it out. So that's
Absolutely.
number one,
Yep.
checkups and check-ins schedule.
Awesome.
All right. So number 2, and I think you and I both love this, and it might say it's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is the stop doing list. So before we get into your resolutions and what do you want to add this year and what is your vision for this, how about just take a beat and say, what are you going to stop doing? And the why for this is pretty straightforward. It's really hard to have bandwidth to gracefully absorb anything new without removing something. And there is, without a doubt, on all of our day-to-day lists, on all of our monthly lists, things that we just don't need to even have on the list anymore and also could stop doing.
100%. And I love this so much because we're pretty bad at it. We're really good at adding more things in.
Totally.
But it takes a minute, right? It takes a minute to say, how is this serving me? Is it still serving me the way I want it to? Am I still getting the same benefit, joy, whatever adjective you want to put next to it from doing this, or
Yeah.
is it time to let it go? And I think it's a great reminder to do it annually, because I think we fall into habit quite a bit, stuff
Yes.
we're doing for our partners or our children that,
Yeah.
maybe it's time they do those things on their own and we don't need to be doing
So
those
true.
things
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's time that the kids can make their own lunches,
Yeah.
and kind of reassess those maturation cycles for us. What are we doing? Do we need to be doing this? Because I agree
Yeah.
100%. We have one cup to fill. And if it's at capacity, we can't add a lot to it. And so
Yeah.
making sure the first thing we do, clean out, make room, then we can usher in what's new.
Yeah. And I think, trying to operationalize this, there were two things I've been playing with that have helped me. One is I have this idea each week where I'm like, all right, this is my to-do list. And then I have had this rule of thumb, which is I either cross it off or I let it go. Like if I'm not getting it done this week, then I'm letting that thing go. It's not critical. And so to just keep carrying it forward, like I'm carrying some ridiculous things forward, like the kids' school yearbook, scrapbook thing. They don't care. They don't want to see it anyway. Why do I carry this on my to-do list every single week? So there's like that little tactical idea of look at your week or your month and say, I'm either crossing this thing off or I'm letting it go. And then the other kind of challenge to yourself is take a minute and say, these are the three things I'm going to stop doing in this time period, whatever that time period is that feels comfortable to you. It could be monthly, it could be daily. These are the things I'm going to stop doing. The
Love it.
stop it list. What's number 3?
So number 3, find something that really gives you joy. That is just about the joy of doing that.
That
And
feels so decadent, doesn't it? You're like, what? Just
it,
because I like it?
right? And maybe it's taking 30 minutes to watch a show. Maybe it's going for a walk at a certain time of day, a time of day you really like to be outside.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's really sitting for 60 seconds with a hot coffee watching the sunrise, like whatever it is. And don't discount the joy. Don't rationalize the joy. Just embrace it.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
love that.
if you love playing pickleball, don't worry if you're running enough steps on the court. Just enjoy the fact that you're out doing it. And I think we always try to add multiple levels of value to the activities we're doing instead of just saying, oh, I'm out here just because it's fun. I
Yeah,
love
just
people
because I
with.
like it. I like
Yeah.
it. That's enough. Yes.
And
Yes.
don't try to rationalize that it needs to be more than that, because that
Yeah.
is enough and that is fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah. More than enough. I was thinking about that because you shared this idea with me a little earlier. I was thinking about that today when I went out to snowboard. It was like, for like an hour. There's nothing that I'm doing. I'm not accumulating, to talk about how many ski lifts and runs I got, or it's not really a good workout. I'm just, going on the mountain because I love the feeling of being on the mountain.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that.
And so I think that's important. And I think that ties into our next one then.
Yes. And, we did a whole episode on this for Thanksgiving. It makes a ton of sense, but it is such a mission critical habit and such a soft skill to give credence to, even though it gets so much play in all of our news feeds. There is massive science around the benefit of doing the gratitude list. So, one fun thing to do at the end of the year, this is our fourth kind of quick hit, is just take a look at your phone, not social media channels. Look at your phone, look at your pictures, and maybe give yourself 20 minutes to write down 3 or 4 things each month that you loved, people you loved being with, things you loved doing, and just hand write that gratitude list for the year to give
Mhm.
yourself that dopamine, uplift, to give yourself that the grooving in your head about the things that you're grateful for, and to power up what you're going to take into 2025.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that gratitude practice, as we talk to more and more people that we're engaged with, whether it's through the podcast or doing some in-person programming, I feel like this is one that's really starting to stick with people, and that we're getting a lot of feedback about how not only does it give you that dopamine and that oxytocin and all of those great neurochemicals and feelings, it really does remind you of all the great things that you've done and really help you set priorities. But it really sets your intention for the day. And a lot of people, myself included, who weren't very skilled at that, didn't think there was a lot of power in that, have really embraced it and really, I mean, this is cheesy, but get out of the right side of the bed.
Yeah.
When my
Yes.
kids
Yeah.
were little, it was so funny. My mom used to say, "Go back in and get out of the other side of the bed. You got out of the wrong side." And she would send my kids when they were toddlers back into their rooms, into their bed, had them get out the other
Oh,
side,
that's
just
so
to kind of
great.
reframe the day. And that's exactly what this gratitude practice does. I've really tried to say, the alarm goes off. I don't want to go work out. Whatever. And then I'm like, no, I get to go do these things. Or
Yes.
what
Yeah.
is one thing I'm really grateful for today? And it totally changes how I get out of bed and start the day. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for you teaching me and reinforcing this practice
Yeah.
in me and bringing it to everyone else.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, this next one, you know it well. You take us through it. This is our number one lever.
Okay, so this is our number one, is pick a movement and add your movement snacks in. And I would say, again, I think my whole mantra is, don't set the bar at unattainable, where we tend to do it, and maybe you do have a great goal, and that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Like, I'm going to run a marathon this year, or I'm going to climb 6 flights of stairs, or whatever your goal is. That's
Yeah.
great. But when we're talking about movement, we're talking about, let's make it a lifestyle. Let's get to the point where it's subconscious, where I know the last 10 minutes of every hour I get up and I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. And it just is ingrained. And we just start to build our lives around how we've built in movement.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this as our fifth kind of idea on offer, is to see movement as, it's so important that you think of it across those two pillars, right? Here's your exercise for the day, whatever that is: sprint interval training, lift heavy, yoga, whatever. That's your exercise for the day. And then there's movement throughout the day. And those two are what make up this idea of prioritizing movement in your daily rhythm for the year, and being
Absolutely.
kind of, intentional and architecting both of those components each day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Next one is our other big hitter. My favorite is, um, let's try to optimize our sleep, right? So let's, again, big self deep dive to say what's working for me in sleep and what isn't. Because if I'm not sleeping, the rest of this gets really, really, really hard. So if I want to pick a couple of things, and maybe they're seasonal, maybe it's a new white noise machine because the snowplows are loud where we live.
Yes, yes.
Maybe it's thinking about how can I optimize the temperature, whatever your thing needs to be. But let's try it on
Yeah.
and stick with it and see how it goes. And this again, back to metrics and monitoring and data, this is a great everyday data point. And you don't have to do it every day for a year, but while you're making these changes, one, subjectively, do you feel better? And two, what is your objective data telling
Yeah.
you?
I love that. I think it's just, for a lot of people, just giving yourself permission to make it a priority. It is a mind shift. And we've talked about this in multiple contexts. Our online course and podcast episodes before. Our generation, our cohort specifically, has been so ingrained to work hard, play hard, to sleep when you die. It's a badge of honor if you get a lot done and you didn't sleep. And that mind shift is happening, and just this is the reinforcement to continue to make it happen and then to operationalize it.
Yeah. And I think, even beyond a night of sleep is resting when you need it. And I know we've talked about this before, but I'm always laughing. My husband is a physician. He works a lot of hours. He works really hard. And, but when he's tired, he takes a nap. No, I mean, not at work, but, like at home
Yeah.
on the weekends and
Yeah.
stuff.
We got on
Like,
the weekend. Yeah.
it's 2 o'clock and I know he's going to go take a nap. I would never give myself the permission to do that. And why not?
Yeah.
Like you said, there's nothing on that list that usually can't wait 30 minutes to just
Yeah.
recharge. And so I think also with this whole idea of sleep is listening to our bodies and knowing when we need to recharge, and going back to that, having some grace and saying, I'm actually doing something proactive. It's not that I'm being lazy or all these other negative
Yeah.
connotations
That somehow got labeled. Yeah.
that we assign to activities that rest and rejuvenate, or that we consider a luxury to take to sit down for 5 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
like, and men tend to be better at this than we are. They're tired, they take a nap.
Yeah. So
So
true.
yeah.
I have definitely been practicing that since our sleep episode. And I have to say, I do, even like, I've done the 6 minute nap, I've done the 20-minute nap. I can't really do more than sort of 90-minute. If I do more than that, then I'm actually sluggish,
Yeah.
but I'm having fun playing with it and finding
Yeah.
the right cadence.
And like, I'm not a napper and I've never been a napper, like, even when I was working crazy shifts and crazy hours, but I have given myself permission that I am going to sit down for 10 minutes. Or I
Mm-hmm.
might actually, and I'm going to give myself these breaks. And when I first started doing it and I was working from home, I shut the blinds because I didn't want the neighbors to walk by and like see me putting on coffee. I mean, it took
Because
that
it got that much in your head, right? So so
much.
much of that socialization, right?
And it's like, understanding being busy versus being productive. And I felt
Yeah,
like if I wasn't busy, I wasn't productive. And that's not
totally.
true. Those things are not infinitely intertwined. And so just really, optimizing your sleep and working in whatever phase you need to work on there. But then also listening to when you need some rest and recovery,
Yeah,
because that will exponentially increase your gains if we take that time.
awesome. Okay, so that's 6 of our 11. Number 7, this is one you and I both love, but you know, it is a tactical thing to try to program in on how to really invest and amplify your relationships and your relationships that are specifically uplifting relationships. And
Yeah.
so we've talked about this before. I know I always use the quote of my father-in-law who says, pick your drinking partners wisely." That's his version of the 5 people in your head really matter. And so with this one, it's invest in the relationships who are uplifting relationships, those 5 people in your head. Try to invest there and amplify the time there. And you can do it tactically through a gazillion ways: texting, emails, old fashioned letters, but actually prioritizing it with the same sort of diligence or more that you would prioritize a Zoom call at work. Like
Absolutely.
it's a priority for
Yep.
you and for them. That's a gift.
And I think along with that goes the practice of saying yes. You
Yeah.
know, we're often tired and social engagements come up or other things, and we're like, it's just so much easier to stay home. But practice
Yeah.
saying yes.
Yeah.
And I had such a beautiful illustration of this last week. So I met family members who normally we wouldn't spend. That hasn't been our tradition or our habits in the past to spend time with this group of family members. And it was the most magical few days. And I will be eternally grateful for that trip. And it has already spawned, okay, we're going to do this again next year. And this is an
Oh,
annual thing. And, this is family that didn't come together because we were all doing our own thing, but we've lost some family members in the last couple of years. And so we've kind of become tighter and more engaged. And my kids even looked at me and they're like, why didn't we spend as much time with these people? And I was like, well, life has these cycles that ebb and flow, but I'm so glad we're having this opportunity to connect and share, because that's also how our stories stay alive and how traditions stay alive. And it's just so important. And sometimes we forget until we're actually there doing it.
so true. Yep. Okay, so that is number 7. Number 8.
So this is all you. You got to do number 8 because you are the master here.
Yeah, well, I love it because it's the science alongside the kind of intuitive behavior choice, which is the Losado ratio, the 3-to-1 ratio. And I know we have talked about this in other episodes, but this is the idea that I think Dr. Fredrickson really pioneered this work with Losado, that there is a mathematical equation that demonstrates the ability to power up a positive energy, a happy environment, a joyful way to be in life when you think about actively managing a negative influence as a 1 with 3 positive influences as a 3. So the 3-to-1 ratio is whatever context you're in: parenting, in a partnership with your romantic partner, in a friendship, in a work context, to actively try and deliver 3 positive, uplifting, authentic, right? I mean, it has to be genuinely how you feel, um, moments or feedback loops to everyone that's sort of neutral to negative. And the reason for doing it is so that you continue to generate this energy of happiness and optimism, which has been tied to longevity, financial success, relationship happiness, all the things we want in life. And it's like building the muscle of positivity in an authentic way, like you would build your bicep. So the 3-to-1 ratio is a way for you to kind of mechanize that and think about it with a discipline to build that optimism and build that positivity.
Absolutely. And you are the master at this. I mean, every email I read from you, every text, like even if there's serious stuff that we have to discuss and deal with, like I leave every interaction with a sense of positivity. And so you are the master teacher of this. And I know it's something that it's an area I really need to work on because I sometimes tend to be a little more cynical. Maybe we'll just put it at that. But and so I think that is so important, and I think it ties in the gratitude piece too, because on the recipient end, I'm really grateful when I feel that way after an interaction. So I appreciate when people interact with me using ratios like that because it makes the other people feel good, and to me it increases engagement. Like there's a big ripple effect from introducing that mindset, I think.
Well, and that is a very kind way to share it, but also kind of a really good observation because I think our natural instinct, mine and yours both, and many of our people who have been successful in life is to be a fixer, right? So
Right.
you focus on what needs to be fixed, what's wrong here, how can I fix this? And there's nothing really wrong with that instinct. It's just coupling it with the uplift part is the balance to make it come across with a positive energy that gives it a better odds of success on the track record.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's
Okay.
number 8. All right, number
All right.
9. Three
Number
more left.
9, protein. And I think this is an interesting one for us, right?
Yes.
I feel like 2024 was the year of protein.
Wasn't
And we
it?
were
I mean, I
all
feel like we hear about it all the time, like protein up.
on the bandwagon. I mean,
Yes.
I think you tried every protein drink ever created.
Yes.
I don't know how much money, we should have kept a tab sheet on how much money we spent trying to
Totally.
create the protein.
Yes.
And then we used some of our metrics and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe
Too much protein. That's too much.
maybe not, and so I think this is just a great reminder. One, science changes. Two, we're all individuals.
Yeah.
And so again, there's not a protocol that fits everyone because we all read the textbook a little differently. And so we used to laugh about that in medical school and residency and practicing medicine is that, there's a reason that we learn differentials because 6 people can walk in with similar symptoms and have 6 different things going on.
Totally.
And so, or 6 people can have the same diagnosis and look very different. And so I think all of this we have to take with that grain of salt and that caveat that probably none of us were taking in as much protein as we need to build muscle, especially in perimenopause and menopause. How much do we actually need to do that? I think is very individual. And I think we need to be cognizant, as I think you and I are starting to become, of kind of matching it with the intensity of what we're doing more on a day-to-day basis versus kind of a blanket, I'm going to eat this much protein day in and day out, regardless of what activity I'm doing.
Totally.
So I think, there was a little more nuance to it than maybe either one of us thought in the beginning. Still a goal, still something I'm working on because I know I was not taking enough, but trying to find the right balance there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, as we went through this journey in the last year, more protein than what we were having before, for sure. Everybody that continue down that path. And listening to your own, your body about this is too much for me to eat right now. I can't, this does not feel good. That is your body talking to you about that's too much, so try a shake or try something different. But the target is a range, right? So the idea is it's a bigger range than what we thought about, or a higher range, than what we thought about. 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of target weight. It's a big range. It could be 80 grams. It could be 120. And that is a big difference. 40 grams of protein. That's like a huge steak. So, it's give yourself grace with that range. Understand it's worth it to eat more protein and why. Earlier in the day, better and why. And it's your body. So eat in a way that feels good to you.
Yeah. And I think, again, tying back into our number 1, this is an area where you might see changes in other factors, as we tend to eat more protein. Sometimes that's often coupled with more fat, like is your cholesterol hanging in there, kind of looking at all of those things together as well. And so absolutely. And more, we all probably needed more protein than what we were having. How far we need to go into this very rigid system, I think is very personal. And depending on what your goals are and how your body's responding to it. So agree 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9. Oh, that was 9. We're 10.
9 protein. We're good. So just 2 more. Okay. Number 10, I love us talking about this because we talk about prototyping habit as a way to think about life and think about this whole journey around mindset and longevity levers is it's not one and done. It's not one formula. Even the science, like we just talked about with protein, we're going to learn more. And so having this ongoing idea of it's a prototyping habit, which means look at 2025 as a baby step for the bonus decades ahead. Like you don't have to get every single idea done this year, right?
Yeah,
2025 can be a step in the direction you want to go. And each month could be a little experiment month. It could be fun to map out 12 months and say, I got 12 experiments. That's what I'm going to do. Or I've got 6 and I'm going to give them each 2 months. Whatever
yeah,
cadence, grace with pace feels authentic to you. Seeing 25 in the scope of 50 more years is a different way to see each of these milestone kickoffs. And it's a powerful invitation.
absolutely.
Lean into the idea that we might have these bonus decades. Why not experiment now to figure out how to fine tune what feels like thrival to you and your lifestyle and your priorities and your body?
Absolutely. Agree 100%. Really don't have much to add. It that's nailed it.
Yep.
And then number 11, which I think relates back to all of it. And again, you are by far the expert here is goals and why goal setting is so important and so valuable and such a strong predictor of success and achievement.
Well, I think you are an expert in living this. I think, the reason why we wanted to end on this one is the idea of goal setting sometimes gets a little bit overdone and it can feel stressful and it can feel like another have to and another must to and another should and no thank you. But what we'd want to put on offer is there's a lot of science that says if you write down your goals, you've got much better odds, like 40% better odds
I think we
to
got to
get
double
there.
down there. Write it down.
Write it down,
It's
write it
not
down. Yeah.
swarming around up here. It's written down someplace where you see it.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be a ginormous goal, but just if you want to do something, you give yourself a better shot at doing that thing if you write it down as a goal statement
Yeah.
and you break it down into some baby step activities that are the practical way of getting to the goal. So the example all the mindset experts will talk to you about is the successful athletes don't envision getting the gold medal. They actually envision doing the practice run and how their skis worked when they came down that run and how they cleared the gates. It's a much more specific action oriented goal visioning than I got a gold medal.
Well,
So
yeah, it's a process goal versus an outcome goal,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so I think that that's a huge thing because our processes, Roger Federer doesn't go and change the way he plays tennis when he loses a match, right? You don't
yeah,
throw out what's worked again and again and again. You fine tune. And so I think that I think that's such a vital point is setting process goals really kind of supplements and highlights everything that we've talked about. This is a process, which means some things are going to work and some things aren't, but I'm dedicating
yes,
myself to the process.
yes,
And that allows us for prototyping and trying things on and accepting when things aren't working the way we thought they were and making adjustments and changes. And so I really have found this. And again, I struggled with process goals. Like outcome goals are pretty easy. I
yeah,
want X,
yes.
process goals.
Because yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it was just because we grew up. We're like, I'm going to get an A. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to get. I mean, you're a competitive athlete. You're like, I'm going to win the game. Very,
Right.
very different than my process goal is I'm going to do homework every night. What? That's doesn't feel the same. Like kind of Shazam.
And then it's also really fun to have those, one big thing. We haven't dove too into this idea of what a masogi is, but
Mhm.
like maybe there is something on your list. Maybe you're ready. Maybe it's tied to a big life event. Last year my husband turned 50 and we did some big things that were all tied around that. And it was great. This past year I had no big goals. It was all process goals and
Yeah,
and maybe they are big to me, but they didn't seem big to others. And so I
yeah,
think that it's okay for those to ebb and flow too. And sometimes you need something really big. I know like if I haven't run a race in a couple of years, I'm like, oh, I think I want to run a race. Like
right,
I'm ready
right.
to go back. But when I was racing all the time, I was like, oh, I'm not excited about this right now. So I think, they could definitely ebb and flow as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think whatever the goal is, one of the learnings we had is the science says people usually quit around day 19. It's
Yeah.
called Quitter's Day. So, in the spirit of giving yourself grace with pace, if you can just put a tag in the idea of make it to day 20, day 21, get over that hump, then you're
Yeah.
getting yourself on the trajectory towards whatever it is, whatever process, or even if it is a misogi and a
Yeah.
series of steps to get you that misogi,
Yeah.
get yourself, just over that 19-day hump.
Yeah. And I think, when we talk about a misogi, which I think we have to do a whole episode
I do
on the
too. It's so
science behind
fun.
misogis because it's fascinating.
Yes.
But the idea is to get to start the misogi. You shouldn't necessarily be able to finish your misogi, but the goal is I've I've done this preparation goal so I
Yes.
can actually start this, whatever it is.
Yes.
I may not finish it, but I've gotten myself to the start line.
Yes.
I just have to share the story because it just kills me every time. I love that you put the science behind day 19. So last year we were doing dry January, and
Yes.
my husband's birthday happens to be January 18th. So
That's tough.
January 18th,
Yeah.
he wants to go skiing. It's crazy because it's
Yes.
a holiday weekend. And it's snowing like gangbusters outside. We get
Yes.
to the mountain, go to get the skis out of the car. We'd forgotten our daughter's skis. I'm like, okay, we're not going to go back home. And it taken, we live a mile away. It's taken us
Yeah.
2 hours to get there. I was like, okay, we're just going to go. We'll rent or demo some skis, whatever. Go wait in line, get them. We get in the lift line. It's like 2.5 hours long. So I
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was because
back
of the
and I'm
jump
like,
day.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to stay. And they wouldn't like refund my money. I'm like, I live down the street. Come on.
Yeah.
So we get back in the car, we go home. So 4 hours later, nobody skied, everybody's angry, everybody's hungry. And the football coach at his college football program had left for a different school. So he was super upset and like starts drinking. And I was like, oh, day 18.
There it is. It's time for the cocktail. So that
If
is
we
it.
would have
Yes.
made it one more day, we probably would have been golden.
Yeah, it's right. It is. It's right. It's right. So we're thinking of a day 19.
Yeah,
Yes.
day
Yes.
19. That's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were just laughing about that today. I was like, oh, we got to make it past day 19 this week.
That's right. That's right. Right. So, short term.
All right. Well, let's run the list real quick in case people don't like to listen to me babble.
So just 11, because we went to 11,
Yeah.
know your checkups and your check-ins. Some of them
Yep.
are standard. You can link to the show notes for those and then add your own, give yourself some grace there.
Yep. Start with your stop doing list, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
check off your list, things that you're going to stop doing so you have the capacity to embrace the things you want to start doing.
Yes. Which, number 3, add in something that just brings you joy, just for joy. No other multitasking underlying rationale, just your joy.
Yep. And that ties into number 4. Make a gratitude list of what you really loved. And I love the suggestion of flipping through your pictures on your phone because we often forget how many amazing experiences we've had over a year. And so having that technology to be able to just carry with us and remind us of all the great things and beautiful things in life is really helpful.
Awesome. All right, number 5, because this is our number 1 pillar when we talk about longevity levers, movement, and thinking of movement in terms of both the exercise that you want to get done that day and the process through which you want to stay movement oriented in the day as well.
Yeah. And then on to number 6 is pick something according to sleep that you want to work on or recovery, which could be optimizing your night sleep, adding in a nap or some sort of recovery period during the day. But pick an area of sleep to really nail down because we know that keeps us cognitively going, prepares us physically for each day, and is just vital to our overall health.
Awesome. Okay, number 7, investing and amplifying relationships, specifically relationships that uplift you. Top 5 voices in your head.
Absolutely. Number, what are we, 8?
8.
Our 3-to-1 ratio, our 3-to-1 Lozado ratio. So remembering 3 positive things with every negative thing and how we view the world, how we communicate with others. Not only does it bolster positive neurochemistry in ourselves, it bolsters positive neurochemistry in the recipients of that information and makes us much more productive and efficient, and helps us thrive, helps us enjoy what we're doing day to day.
Love that. Okay, number 9, protein up. We talked about it. Just get more protein and get more protein in the context that feels good to your body.
Yep. Number 10, think of 2025 as the long haul canvas. This doesn't have to be big things out the gate. It can be a month of trials. It can be 6 months of something, but you pick the canvas and it's a doorway into these bonus decades that we are so lucky to be able to participate in. And so let's use it wisely.
Yes. And lastly, it's worth taking the time to just write down the goals. As cliche as it feels, writing them down gives you a better success odds, and also helps you get past the day 19 quitter day.
Love it. All
Yeah,
right.
awesome. Happy New Year. We've loved the time with you in 2024.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. If you liked what you heard and you got some tips on how to live better right now and for the long haul, please help us reach more midlife women. Please share and rate and like this show. And we can't wait to continue the dialogue with you on our next episode. Until then, thank you. It's time.